Hello, my name is Maria Bezubova and you're at my channel Fertilizers Jazz. Here we talk about events, trends, technologies in the world of fertilizers and agriculture. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and let's jazz! Today I'm thrilled to uncover for you a very interesting and hot topic related to situation in one of global very important markets, which will be the key for global sentiment in the last quarter of this year, because this market is entering the most active phase of fertilizers purchasing. And this is Brazil, of course. In order to do this, I am happy to host a cool guest, Victor Cazzo, managing partner of consulting company Venda na Hora Certa. Victor holds a degree of agricultural engineer and has vast experience in agricultural companies like Cargill as a soybean buyer and Bunge as a sales trader for options and futures, as well as fertilizer company Mosaic as a key account manager for trading. I am happy to welcome you, Victor, and thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invite, and thank you for we can discuss a little bit about fertilizers markets in Brazil.
Yeah, exactly. Victor, Brazil now enters the hottest period of the year in terms of fertilizers purchases. So, of course, everyone across the globe is very, very closely watching situation in Brazilian agriculture and trying to understand farmers' intentions in front of this new season. And it's not an easy season for Brazil, of course. Last season, 23-24, was a very, very tough one, with weather conditions significantly influencing harvests. We remember that. However, 24-25 looks much better according to the latest August USDA report. There will be a significant increase in production of all key crops, actually, versus a year ago. Soybeans are expected to be up by 9%, corn by even 11%, so significantly higher. And taking into account your vast experience both on the agricultural side in agricultural companies like Cargill and Bunge, as well as on the fertilizer side in Mosaic, I'm sure that you are very close to the farmer's mood and you feel what is the real situation there. So how do you think farmers evaluate the results of 24-25 season?
Yeah, so se você é brasileiro, pode ativar as legendas aqui para ver o vídeo também. But answer a question about farmers. Today we have this consultant company here, and we currently every day we speaking to farmers from Rio Grande do Sul to Maranhão and north to south to Brazil, and we can see different situations. But anyways, the this last season, 24-25, farmers they got in the most part of the country a better yields and that reflecting in better margins from them. Besides that, when we saw this commercial war between US and China, it's moving the demand from soybean mainly, the Chinese soybean demand for Brazil, in that is keeping the price up in Brazil, and especially now we are in one of the best moments for selling soybeans in Brazil. So that all those combination, good yields and pricing is fair, we can say that they are not like exploding like what happened in the first trade war in if US, but they are here prices this year. So farmers are getting better margins looking for the soybean this year. But when we look for the next year, then we got some challenge, extra challenge. We can added the interest rates really high. Also, the La Nina is coming up. Maybe this last August report showed over 60% chance of La Nina happening. And also the fertilizers price, putting the risk on the operations. And some farmers, for example, in most of Brazil, they already bought fertilizers. But when you look for Rio Grande do Sul, it's usually a market and come a little bit later. But this year they have another challenge and it's credit because they have like 3 or 4 seasons, bad crops and bad yields. And now the credit, it's not just high interest rates, but also limited for the risk of the region. And the La Nina showing up again, it's one more difficulty for the farmers and for the banks, for the loaners to lend us money.
I see. I see. Indeed, it's never-ending story. It's always some difficulties around, of course, because it is agriculture. But as you mentioned, 25, 26 looks forecast looks even more optimistic. So what are the farmers' key focus areas for the next season? How do you see it? So, for example, during past couple of seasons, we have seen that soybeans planted area was increasing constantly. Do you think it will be still the case, or farmers will be changing their strategies, let's say, and what would these strategies will be?
Yeah, there's a little bit of area there was designated to increase, then we'll keep it. But in general, we are not keeping the same growing areas than we have the last 4 years. For example, when Brazil was growing 4 to 5% areas in soybean, for example. So for the next year, we might have like 0.5% growing, but those are some pastures or some areas that already nominate for that, and mainly big groups or not the a medium or a small farmer are looking to increase area for the next year. So that's one point. And another point, when we look again for the south, some farmers, and we have been talking to, they might prefer plant a corn now in the summer rather than soybean because of the prices of the fertilizers. Again, is one of these challenges that they are facing. So maybe in some areas in south, because it's kind of late in Brazil to get fertilizers right now for soybean, they might change this for corn this year again, or summer corn rather than soybean. So we still have some growing areas, mainly talking about soybean, but we cannot assume it's the same growing that we have the last 4 years.
I see, I see. Thank you. You already mentioned this problem with credits that, as far as I understand, continues developing, unfortunately. Of course, it is a significant problem for the farmers. Can you please explain more how this poor access to credits actually affects purchasing activity now, and how it will affect purchasing activity further in agricultural year? So how serious this problem is, in fact?
So yes, when we look at for mainly the cost of the farmers here in Brazil, the fertilizers is the biggest one. I remember that I went for internship in US in 2018, I guess, and then a farmer, they almost not using anything on soybean and the corn. They just make a little bit of urea and that's all. But when we look for Brazil, every year we need to supply again the soil fertilizers, and we are getting even more every year, a little more yields and better yields, just in first soybean and corn. So we need to replace these fertilizers for the both cultures, and then we bring up a little bit more of costs, and that's the challenge, because if you have the higher costs in fertilizers, and then you added, for example, in Brazil, the interest rates now it's 15% a year. It's basic interest rate. So the banks and the tradings, they all looking above this number. So how much that costs for the farmer when we put interest rates on this account. So what I saw some farmers doing is reduce a little bit of points or the nutrient on phosphate fertilizer, for example, using what they have already in the soil, or working if not if a full fertilizer, but using precision agriculture to put specifically the points where they need to be to accumulate, let's say, the fertilizer this year because it's a really challenge. The higher costs, and then you added up the interest rates really high, is the highest in the last 25 years in Brazil, and then farmers are struggle for that. And when you look at for the subsidies, a lot of countries there's a lot of subsidy. In Brazil, we already have the same government subsidy, o Plano Safra, how they call, but it's not exactly a cheapest one or is not exactly available for everybody. So we got the biggest one in the history, but we already are going to a biggest crop and biggest highest cost. So these subsidies from the government really not what help it's the farmers. Actually, I saw another day a banking statistics here, just 2 or 3% of the farmers in Brazil got those subsidies from the banks compared to the other countries. Uh, and that's a big challenge. So farmers usually looking for tradings to make barter or to exchange grains for fertilizers, and when they work in dollars and not in reais, they might get a little bit lower uh, tax fee on those transactions. And I think that's some of those strategies farmers are looking for: reduce a little bit of phosphates, work if trade is in dollars, delaying the buy, and so part of the market is still open by now for buying fertilizers. And I think those are the main things. And maybe switch about crops, not soybean, looking for summer corn.
I see. I see. That's exactly what is happening also in other parts of the world. We see similar things, maybe a bit from the different reasons, but similar things happening across European countries as well. Um, Also, another part of this problem, as I see it, that I would like also to uncover with you, it is not only Brazil where crops production is expected to increase both this agricultural year and next year, but also there will be a record corn production in the US, as we know, and other major exporters like us in Ukraine and Argentina will also increase production. And as well as for soybeans, Argentina is going to have a higher harvest, at least expected for now. So ample harvests will keep future prices low, and it's already the trend which is obvious. And if we add to the picture what you already mentioned, elevated level of all key fertilizers in 25, fertilizers affordability hits the lowest rate, at least in 5 years. So please explain, you already started touching on that, how these ratios, crops to fertilizers, usually it's corn to urea, yeah, corn to phosphate, what Brazil is mostly looking at, how these ratios look like at the moment, and what do you expect for the upcoming agricultural season?
Yeah, mainly farmers in Brazil, the most part, they cannot change soybean for corn, but some areas like in Rio Grande do Sul, they might do that. And the question then the farmers are asking actually is what gonna be the prices for the harvest, for example, because a lot of them usually, and that's part of the job that we develop here, is not let the crop to sale on the harvest time. Is being looking really before the crop to buy in the right time, looking the ratio between fertilizers and the grain or fertilizers and soybean and phosphate or soybean and moppy and or maybe corn and urea, and that's I think the key challenge here, even for Brazilian farmers. They are really good when we talk about production, but they don't really get the idea when we talk about commercializations or the right timing to buy and sell. And sometimes what happens is they pay high prices for produce and they let to sell in the best, I mean, the worst prices in the worst time. For example, in April in Brazil is when we got the lower prices for soybean and in July, June, July is when we got the lower prices for corn, for example, in Brazil, because it's normal when we talk about seasonality and the offer and demand is the moments when we got a lot of offer. And so what we can bring it up for the farmers and numbers when we look at here to take decisions, I think is the main idea on where farmers could buy better and get out of the risk, let's say like that, and not let the market decide what will be the profit for the next year. But it's a long way to go to bring these ideas up. Um, and talking about soybean, I think we, in those ratios, and like you said, I think we can have a little bit change in south. And about corn, we might have some reduction on investments, but not exactly in area yet, because usually the farmers they wait a little bit to see how the soybean goes. If it goes and if they can plant in the right window, then they will plant 100% corn or even expand corn areas with corn investments. But if the soybean gets late for planting, like the La Nina, it's usually an issue here in Brazil, and then the farmers will plant soybean a little bit later, and they can reduce corn areas or maybe the investment on corn because the perfect window for planting it's out. So it's some things then we have watching for, then we are keeping looking for the next uh, maybe 20 to 30 days. We can find out better how is this next season is going to be. But when we look at about margins, corn is going better margins now than soybean, and maybe farmers then can change, they will change a little bit, but not most of them. They in many areas, they cannot switch 100%. Like in Cerrado here in Mato Grosso, it's not so common, and other areas it's not so common to change. But in South, it's more possible to do this switch.
Okay, so taking into account everything that you just explained, how do you see the consumption, total consumption for, let's say, key products that are key for Brazilian market, which we know like urea, MAP, potash, these things. How do you see it if we compare it to previous year?
So uh, we can see like uh, for high phosphate elements like MAP, DAP, we are getting lower because of the prices. Prices is going up almost every day until now. I think now they kind of stop raising, maybe fall a little bit in the last month. I could say that here in Brazil, but something's new came up, like some phosphate if lower points like 840 from China. They are getting really, really up in Brazil. They are getting imported, and that's not so common the last years. But this brings us alternative to keep making phosphate elements here. So there's something they switch them also from a MAPI, for example, to super simples, also, or super triple. Those elements are getting more attractive for farmers, and they got more market, and also they got more imported from the last years. And when we look for corn, I can see that because of this tender urea from India, market is keeping really up, and this ammonium sulfate is getting up, yeah, it's getting in Brazil from China again. And China is getting one of the bigger suppliers here for Brazil. So farmers are also looking rather than urea, changing for ammonium for make this next crop, and also some blends if ammonium and other nitrogens to make the crop better and less cost for the next season. So that's one of the points, the mainly points we can bring here is this difference from the last year, for example, for this year. China is getting I would say the Russia and China is getting the two biggest suppliers here in Brazil. Of course, um, China is getting more in nitrogen and phosphate, bringing these new products. It's not new, but for the Brazilian markets, I could say that some new things coming up. And I can see that. For example, farmers reducing MAPI, changing for TSP and Super Simples, and they changing from urea for sulfato de ammonia. And also, they are keeping potash MOPI. They keep the same level of buying from the last year. I don't see this market reducing, but in general, the consumption of fertilizer in Brazil is growing because one of the points I would like to bring up is the ethanol industry is growing in Brazil. Years ago, we don't got these industries, and now they are they're giving a little bit of support for corn prices, like in Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, many areas. And now farmers start investing a little bit more on corn and also invest in fertilizers for corn. What's not common if you look at 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and this is bringing up the consumption of fertilizers even for corn as it's not like a second crop. I would say is even soybean and corn is even crops now when farmers look at what they decide to invest, and also because the new corn hybrids they give a little bit or they give better yields. So those better yields also export a lot of nutrients from the soil. So farmers need to replace those nutrients again. And because that they are investing in things like it's not normal when you look at 5 years ago, like putting phosphate on the corn is not something that we used to have. They used to put a bigger or higher fertilizers, a phosphate on soybean, and then just put corn with a little bit urea. But now they are putting phosphate on corn and then on soybean and investing uh, really heavy when we talk about corn too. So those two things, growing area of soybean and those ethanol industries, I think that's the two keys for the growing of fertilizer also in Brazil.
Uh, Talking about this trend that you mentioned, switching from, let's say, higher priced fertilizers but with higher nutrients content to the lower priced fertilizers. We have seen already this trend for Brazil in 2022 when Russia started the war against Ukraine and the prices globally went over the roof. And there was the same trend. Immediately, Brazilian market reacted and we saw this shift. However, afterwards, when prices normalized in 23, farmers came back to their usual, let's say, as normal, yeah, situation as normal, and switched again back to urea and higher phosphates. So, how do you see it now? Do you think this trend is just a reaction to the high prices, or it can stand? And second question related to this is a bit about agronomy. Is it possible at all, to have such significant amount of sulfate, which brings sulfur in the ground, instead of urea, which is simple nitrogen?
Yeah, that's a question that I'm doing for the farmers too. If they really can exchange because you increase the operational work because of the points of nitrogen on the element. So that the agronomic side, that's one of the questions. But what I haven't seen farmers to doing is increasing the blends. So they make a really high fertilizer blends, and then they just cover a little bit of urea later. So they don't put all the nitrogen from the urea. They kind of divide the two in a strategy to getting inside, for example, with 20,020, 500 kilos, and then they came back if maybe 100 or 200 kilos of urea per hectare, and then they complement the nitrogen points. So they kind of spread the bill in between nitrogen and sulfate. So agronomically looking, it's what I haven't seen, but not all the regions they can make it that. But in general, I think that's the strategy they are using. And about the trend, I think it's really more about the offer. For example, this year, when we look at urea and sulfate, uh, the offer of urea is kind of restricted. India took over all the thing for them, and not just because the buying, but because the situation then we got farmers, they got a little really good moment to buy nitrogen for the next crop, like safrinha corn 26 in March. But not everybody was ready to buy this in March and April. And after that, we got the Israel and Iran war, and then we got the India tenders, two ones, and then they bought a lot of urea. I think is one of the bigger signs 2020, I guess. So they really took over all the urea from the market. And besides that, we have China sending a lot of sulfate for Brazil. So I guess it's more about the offer. It's coming in than really a trend for farmer looking to change the way they buy. I think it's more about what is cheaper, what we can buy cheaper now. I think farmers are always looking for that.
I see, I see. Thank you. Also, you mentioned an important trend, which I also fully agree with, is delaying the purchasing, which is again a
Yes.
usual thing which many farmers across the globe do, and that's as I see it, is happening right now with Brazilian buying. So the whole globe is nervously watching when Brazil finally starts purchasing urea, which theoretically should have already started, but still we're not there yet because, as you mentioned, India and a lot of cards, were reshuffled for Brazilian buyers, I believe. So, what is your expectation when this purchasing will finally start?
They need to start, but I think the what will be uh, the decision farmer gonna make it. I used to put some things in layers, but the first one is the ratio between corn and urea or fertilizers. I think it's always the first one. And when we look at Mato Grosso, they learned to do that really well, so they anticipated this movement. So Mato Grosso is always ahead of the buying seasons looking at Brazil. And they learn it because logistica is trouble because I mean they have big farms, big areas, so they cannot make mistakes. And I think Mato Grosso is the best example, and they really learn it how and when to buy, looking for the ratio between grains and fertilizers. After that, we look at for the delivery window. For example, I would say in Brazil we need to buy 2 months, even at least is the last moments, 2 months before start planting or even start before I start using fertilizer because we have a really it's a big country, but it's a really tough logistica, and we cannot like I want to buy it tomorrow. I want to buy today and get the fertilizer tomorrow. It's not how it's gonna work. And so that's the second motivation. I think the first one is the grains, and second is the window to deliver those fertilizers. And looking for that, the relation between urea and corn is not so good. It's better for sulfate, like we said, and the driver for the start buying will be the grain. And talking specifically about corn and urea is correlated. Uh, I think we uh, we are going up in corn prices again. I think we got the lowest moment in July and beginning of August. And I think the prices will be raising again for now to the end of the year because of the season again. The harvest is delayed a little bit of corn in Brazil this year, so these lower prices came a little bit later. But by now the prices are raising, and if the ureas stop or even fall for the prices, we can have better ratios, and farmers will look at for buying again in the next 30 days, and then they will change focus for planting. It's normal. They will plant in the soybean season, and then they can back for the market again in middle of October and November. I think as this, I will set up those moments. Right now, it's sometime, and then after the soybean planting season, then they release a little bit and start looking again for the next crop.
I hope there will be no new Indian tender at that exact moment again, because otherwise it will be another issue for the buyers. Um,
Do you think that India can bring another tender soon this year?
I
They
believe
need
yes.
it.
I believe they should because they need to buy. It's the $1 million question always when it happens. But yes, yes,
Yeah.
they should. They should. They should. So hopefully it will not coincide 100% with the window when Brazil really needs to purchase. One more
Yes.
important angle that you already mentioned, and of course that we cannot overlook, is logistics. Moving millions of imported fertilizers and export also significant harvests, of course, is not an easy task. And we hear now that there are congestions and problems again, because it happens regularly, as far as I understand. But again, we hear about these problems at Brazilian ports. So can you please explain, is it really the case? How significant are these problems now? And when do you think they will be resolved? To make sure that all
Yeah.
fertilizers needed will reach their destination in time.
Yeah, I can spread in two sides this logistics problem because the time that I work at, for example, at the Mosaic, I think the companies they already really organize on logistics. They know when is gonna be the problems, and they fight for that to get fertilizer on time for the farmer. But the really challenge is, I guess, is not on the company side. We have like the infrastructure for ports, and that I would say it's more about governments to um, allow companies to invest or influence companies to invest more in the ports, and I mean or less problems for the farm for the companies to increase this port structure in Brazil, or even hey railroads in Brazil are really nothing. It's just moving by trucks. So can you imagine all those this volume moving by truck in a big country like Brazil? So that's the biggest point. I think that depends a little bit of the government to step out and let the companies invest on that. And companies, they don't see that this is attractive because they need um, permission from the government. They need pay a little higher taxes and a bunch of things, so they don't invest really much in infrastructure in Brazil. So that's one point. The companies like Mosaic and Yara and others, they really are organized, and they move really well if they what they have today. But then we got the farmers, and most of the farmers in Brazil, they don't have warehouses or good places to store those fertilizers early in the season. For example, now it's one of the biggest. August is one of the biggest deliveries months in the year. So, at the port or the factory, they don't they make it 100 tons a day. They cannot make 200. It's 100. So what happened is, for example, in April, May, June, July, the companies are not delivering nothing, and then we got to August, September, October, they work over the capacity to deliver because the farmer don't want to get these fertilizers in April and store. For example, here when we talk about Mato Grosso and Cerrado, we get like 40 graus Celsius outside in the sun, so the big bag will damage and get rotten until October, and also fertilizer can be damaged on the quality. So farmers want to get the fertilizers really close to the plant season, and the companies have a limited capacity to deliver on those moments. And I will just put another point for the safrinha corn is the worst because for soybean you can deliver from April to October, but for safrinha corn we need to deliver it between let's say November and January. So we have a little small window to deliver all these fertilizers, and the biggest problem, I guess, or one of the part of the problems will be the farmers could get better storage of the farm, and then get those fertilizers early. I think that would be 30% of the problem solved for what struggle Brazil. And then also the government helping on some infrastructure, or let the companies invest in Brazil. That will be another one that really change things.
Yes, let's hope that all these infrastructure plans really grow soon, let's say develop soon, because in such a huge country, I can't imagine how you move all this with trucks without railroads, at least. Yeah, it's such a huge challenge, indeed.
Wasting time, for example, for load up one truck, if let's say 37 tons in a company in an industry, and to load to the farm, this truck might be parking around for 2 days waiting to be called, and then he's loading up, and then we maybe wait for another day to get the documents so he can go. So I would say 3 days per truck to load up one load,
Time
and
and
then get to the
cost.
farm and back. It's really waste of the time moving by trucks, but it's what we get. And let's see. Again, when we talk about railroads, we need actually the government to influence, or to help, or even let the companies invest. I think that's the biggest challenge here in Brazil today.
Yes, indeed. You already mentioned, and that is also an interesting and important trend, I think. You mentioned that companies that would like, to go away from the high costs of, for example, highly priced fertilizers, they do precision agriculture in order to make sure that everything that they apply is really coming to the soil and to the roots. So I wanted to ask you about the trend with the specialty fertilizers, which is related or connected, let's say, to the precision agriculture as well. How is this segment developing in Brazil now? Is it something that farmers are actively entering into, or not? How do you see it in the future?
For the precision agriculture, that's the main trend you want to know. I think there's no back ways for that. Even if the fertilizer is getting lower in the future, I think farmers in Brazil, I will say that they are the best in the world. Maybe we got some comments here and disagree, but when look inside the farm, and the experience that then I have, for example, working a farm in US, I remember then I asked for the grandpa of the farmer, so what is this soybean seed? What's the variety? And they said, no, ask him. And then I asked him and ask them, and things like that. And I remember they I was always at the field looking for bugs, and digging the soil, looking things, and they kind of looking, what you're doing? I mean, why are you doing that? I mean, we are in the heaven looking for agriculture, if good soil, and the winter breaks the sorry, the winter breaks the all those insects problems and also disease. So when we came to Brazil, it's really hard game. We have a tropical country, uh, soil are poor. We have insects and disease the whole year, and fire and a whole bunch of things. So farmers are always looking for things that make it better for them, for make them better on production side. One of the things is the precision agriculture, and that's no, I guess there's no way back. And we are seeing a lot of precision agriculture also on spraying the insecticides and pesticides, also using lights to see exactly the point they need to set up. And I will say now, if the Starlink, there is no farm anymore. It's far from internet or GPS or those technologies involved. So I guess that's not step back for those things. I think we this is definitely a trend that will keep for the next years.
That is a great development, great to hear that it is moving and that it is the trend for the future indeed. Um, Victor, I want to thank you very much for this super insightful discussion, but I would like to finalize it with a couple of more personal rather than purely business-related questions in order our viewers learn you and your attitudes a bit more. So my first question will be, after quite many years in the industry, what inspires and surprises you the most in fertilizers and agriculture in general?
Well, I think one of the things then uh well that inspire me in I think it's and what makes me I started my own company is looking how much the farmers waste or loses when we talk about commercializations. I think they don't got the the main idea and how the companies works, how the traders works, and how they also can be working using the grain, using futures market, using the ratios or indicators to take decisions and manage risk. I think that's the thing that inspires me um, to get on this my own company and also talking farmers every day. I think that's what inspired me the most. I think one of the surprises that I got is when I get on those big companies. I thought it was something from another world. It's really hard, and but actually not. I think everybody have the same suffering like logistics, interest rates, and it's always a pull and push between farmers and companies, but they all want the same thing. That in the end of the day, they want to get profit and keep the business for the next year, for the next generation. So I think that there's not such a difference between farmers and multinationals, but sometimes they act as they are enemies, but they are not. They're really good partners, and they all got the same issue. So I think that's something that surprised me when I got for the multinationals, and today working more close to the farmers, something that I can point for them.
Nice one, thank you. My second question is, if you can bust one myth about fertilizers, what would that be?
One thing for fertilizers,
One myth about fertilizers.
oh myth. Some people think fertilizer might end on one day, and well, it's a mineral, and for sure someday we are going to get a limit offered. But I will not be worried if that today. I think for now, the main point it's about supply and demand, profit. They can make it even and again the company then are taking the mineral and the farmer. So I'll say that's not a big issue. Then we can be worried today. And sometimes I can see people say, no, there will not be fertilizer, price is going to raise. And actually, that can happen, and that definitely will happen in some point in the future. But I don't think that's what moves prices by now. And sometimes I can see that in the field when sellers are bringing information, they kind of bring some things out like some company closes the mine or the mine it's over. But I don't think that's really what moves prices today. It's more about if the mine is able to make profit or not or any other issue, and not because we are running out fertilizers next year, for example. I'll say that will happen, but not is not the
Hopefully
main
not
thing
too
again
quickly.
now.
Hopefully not too quickly. Yeah, nice one. Thank you. And my final question will be, how do you explain, for example, to your grandma, what is your job as an agronom engineer?
Yeah, so that's a fun fact. I went for the universe. I graduated as agronomist, but after that, I started working for Corio, and for my grandma and my family, when they say, "Oh, I'm agronomist," everybody think I'm at the field looking plants and soil and those kind of things because that's definitely what I studied for. But when I went for cargo as soybean buyer, and then to Bunge as a trader options, and then the Mosaic doing fertilizers. I stopped trying to explain what I do because it's getting kind of complex to try to explain the CFR and then the dollar and then at the Bungie when I buy call or sell put and those things, or even at the Cargill looking for soybean prices. Everybody want to know why price is gonna go up. I don't know. In Brazil, we have premiums, Chicago dollar cost, a bunch of things. So I try to tell them then I help farmers to sell at the right time and manage risk. I think that's the main point, but I don't get into how I'm gonna make that.
I see. Thank you so much, Victor. It was a very insightful, very interesting discussion. I'm sure all our viewers will be very glad to see you here again sometimes to discuss developments in the Brazilian market. So I will be very glad to host you again, and I wish you and your company all the best. And let Brazil
Yes.
have very nice harvests in front of it.
Yes, yes. Let's see that. I hope the farmers can get good yields because prices are not the best of the years. But even that, if the farmers came looking for a strategy, they can be profitable for the next season. If they don't let for the last time to buy and sell, I think that's uh, the biggest thing that takes profit from them. I think it's wait for tomorrow. I think that's the worst thing you can make it. So thank you once again. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you everybody to watch us, and let's see what happens.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. As usually, I will leave all credentials of Victor and Venda na Hora Certa in the comments. Please let me know in the comments which other questions related to Brazilian market you would like me to uncover, and I will be happy to do so with Victor next time. Please subscribe to the channel, put like to this video, and see you soon.